the May 7th, 2020 school board meeting to order, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Member Clerk, could you please take a roll call?
Yep. Member Corcoran?
Here.
Member Corcoran is here. Member Ketto?
Here.
Member Ketto is here. Member Olson? Here. Member Olson is here. Member Rayfield?
Present.
Member Rayfield is present. Member Tyson? Member Tyson is absent. Member Peterson?
Here.
Member Peterson is here, and Member Luthner is here.
All right. I don't believe we have any changes to tonight's meeting agenda. So I guess we'll take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So
A motion. We have second.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All right. We have no public comments tonight, so we will move right into reports, workshops, or conferences. Anyone? I don't think we've had any of those with all that's going on in the world, so we'll move to 916. Member Olson.
Yes, we had a wonderful meeting last night. It was very long. We had a great discussion on what I think they said Forest Lake does is called decision band method, where they classify all jobs, they collect a market salary information, and they build a salary structure that balances internal equity within the district and external competitiveness within the market. So they're hoping to use that for competitive recruitment and retention. We talked about their long-term maintenance program budget. They will be using that this year for interior surfaces like painting, as well as the Karner Blue gym floor. And they distributed Chromebooks to all students who reported a need. So they have 600 Chromebooks distributed throughout 916. And kind of like us, they're also looking at what their summer program looks like. Their program begins early June, so they're still trying to get a feel of what that's going to look like. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Member Olson. Moving on to communications, also Member Olson.
Yes. Now, we talked a lot about the website. COVID is obviously front and center. According to Renee, the website front page is plain by design so that it's very easy to look at and understand. If you go to district learning, it is filled with links for all grades, technology, childcare assistant, and food and family resources. So a great tool for all families. We talked a little bit about the strategic planning action steps and community ed Facebook posts. You might have seen them, but they're called Get to Know Your Community Ed Staff. So they're featuring community ed staff with a picture and a little bit about that staff. And they're also going to start highlighting some facilities so people can see what our new facilities look like. That's about it.
Thank you, Member Olson. We will move on to Curriculum Instruction Equity Committee with Member Tyson. She's absent tonight, correct?
Correct.
All right. Policy Committee, Member Luthner.
The policy committee met and trying to see my notes, but I believe we go over some of it later on in today, so I don't want to take too much of it away. So I'll say a little bit more as they come up on the agenda, but it was really nice to be able to use distance meeting as well as distance learning that day.
Understood. Thank you, Member Luthner. We will move to Finance, Member Corcoran.
If I missed that meeting, so I was hoping that maybe Rob or Alex could report.
Member Rayfield?
I can't give a report on that.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to get a hold of you guys.
That's okay. I would give a report because I was there as well, but it's in my phone and I'm using my phone for the meeting. So
that's okay. I got
Sorry
it.
about that.
Perfect. Member
I can
Kettle.
cover it.
So
good.
at the topics of the Finance Committee meeting included the fiscal year 20 budget status. MMKR was there to review revenue expenditure trend. We talked about the COVID-19 situation. And I think the hot spot in the meeting, probably more than anything, at least for me, was that, as we all know now, food service and community ed are taking a big hit because they generate income from attendance at the events, whatever. They're taking the biggest hit. And so food service has a $900,000 loss in revenues and a $250,000 loss in expenditures. Community ed right now is looking at a loss of over $1 million possibly in revenues and expenditures down for $150,000. So the bottom line is food service will be $650,000 in the hole by the end of the year potentially, and CE will be down by $850,000, using up almost all of the reserves that CE has. The general fund will even be down to some extent for $125,000. So it's it's obviously putting a lot of pressure on our budget for next year. Fiscal 21 budget status, we talked about that. I won't get into it right now because I'm sure Larry will later, but revenue and expenditure plans. And we also looked at, which I'm going to cover later in buildings and grounds, the athletic fields project status. But again, I think the big things are the loss in revenue for food service and for community ed. End of report.
Thank you, Member Kettle, for bailing us out of that one. Staff Welfare Committee member, Staff Welfare Committee member Raphael.
Sure. In staff welfare, we talked about the distance learning, and we had an update on how things were going. We talked about the budget and how we adjust the budget for student losses. And we talked about school magnet ideas, maybe making one of our schools into an arts magnet.
Thank you, Member Raphael. Equity in our schools, also Member Raphael.
Yes. So thanks. This report comes from Brad Ward. Educational equity work at Forest Lake has not stopped during distance learning. Student affinity groups have continued to meet with their advisors using Zoom and Google Meet to talk about the impact of distance learning on their school and personal lives. District equity leaders will have their final meeting this year on May 21st. Regina Seabrook will lead them through the final chapters of Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. And there will be a special emphasis on how CRT approach can be used in a distance learning setting. And we also had a Equity Alliance meeting and just kind of discussed a similar bunch of topics about how we proceed, with given the distance learning. And also we took a look at the new website that they're putting together that kind of does more to talk about the offerings that Equity Alliance offers. So that's my report.
Thank you, Member Raphael. City or Buildings and Grounds, Member Kettle.
As we all did, we met via Google Hangouts on Thursday, April 16th, which was a little bit of a challenge, but very interesting. Obviously, like all of us, prefer to be in person instead of online, but it did work. We had really two agenda items, as we usually do. We talked construction and capital projects, and we also talked buildings and grounds. Again, the hot points for me, or the hot topics at the meeting, included the athletic fields, which are now, again, still on track. Everything's going ahead as planned. The bond sale happened, started April 2nd and closed on April 30th. The district actually began receiving proceeds from the bond sale. And from the Buildings and Grounds Committee, Bill gave a little bit of a report on the silver lining in the cloud, I guess, if you want to call it that, and the fact that even with the students not in the schools, there's actually plenty of time now to do repair work and painting and refreshing the schools as well as other facilities within the district. So there is some light at the end of that tunnel, some silver lining in the cloud, I guess, and they're able to do all of that repair work. So that ends my committee report.
Thank you, Member Kettle. City of Forest Lake. Also, Member Kettle.
Sorry, nothing to report. I clicked on mute too fast. Nothing to report on Forest Lake right now.
Understood. Superintendent's report, Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a few updates. As you can expect, one of my updates is related to distance learning, but I will save you the time of getting into all the details since we just came out of a work session last week. I know you're aware that this week is Teacher Appreciation Week and Nurses Appreciation Week, and those are, among all of our staff, two critical fields and two critical areas of work for us to work. Our teachers are doing today is really quite remarkable. We've talked about that every week that we've provided updates. They've never worked harder, and they are doing things in an innovative way, in a way that they've never done before in many cases. So a real tribute to their great work. We're only successful in distance learning because of their work. So a big shout out to our teachers and our district nurses and our health office nursing staff and healthcare providers. They're face to face with kids every day in our child care program, and they're truly on the front line with us, and we owe them a real debt of gratitude and recognition for their great work. I'd be remiss if I didn't also recognize our paras who are working every single day, working in childcare and helping with meal distribution and preparation and distribution of learning materials. Our bus drivers who are driving around the district, bringing kids into childcare and delivering meals. Childcare staff before and after the daytime program and throughout the daytime program. Our administrative assistants, custodians, our principal and administrative team. It is a team effort, and all of the folks that I just walked through throughout the district are fundamental and critical to our success. We are averaging about 1,200 meals every day, and those again are at school sites and drop-off sites throughout the district. We actually saw our highest number of child care kids enrolled today. We had up to 50. We've been averaging in the upper 30s to low 40s. We had 50 students at our two sites today. As we shared last week, graduation is on the forefront of many minds throughout the community and our minds as well. Jim Caldwell and his staff have been busy planning and have a really exciting plan for our students. They deserve all the celebration and recognition we can possibly pull together in this critical time and with all the restraints that we have in front of us. By the way, MDE will be providing graduation guidance tomorrow for school districts across the state. So we'll wait and see what that guidance is, and I'll be sure to share that out with the board once we get that, and of course with the high school and community school staff. As was mentioned by Member Kettle, there are significant budget impacts. Larry Martini will be getting into great detail with some of those and will give us some insight into what we anticipate moving into 2021 school year. The governor and his budget staff put out some projected guidance for anticipated budget issues moving forward, and Larry's got some slides and information that will detail that out. So we're going to be really smart to be thinking about what those budget impacts look like for us moving forward, not just next year, but the years to come. We're also in the early stages of planning for summer school. I say early, usually we would be well planned by now, but not being sure what summer school can look like. We're still in the design stage. We've come to the agreement and understanding that we just don't believe more distance learning in the summer school, especially with at-risk learners, is going to be an effective approach to summer school. We're of the belief that if we can bring students into our classrooms in the summer, that's a far better way for us to go. So we're looking to delay any kind of summer school or academic boosting program that we can provide waiting until late summer, perhaps even into August. It buys time for things to loosen up for us if we're going to be able to bring students back. And then we'll use that time to catch students up with any loss of learning that they might have experienced through distance learning. And then needless to say, next school year is less than 5 months away. And we anticipate that next year might look different than a typical year. That's about all I can say because we just don't know yet. But there's been a lot of planning and discussion internally around things that we need to start thinking about if we're bringing students back into school next year. We can't wait till August 1st or August 15th to realize that we need to put things in place. If we need to purchase products or materials to bring kids and staff back safely, we want to be ahead of the purchasing curve, not on the tail end of that, and realize that we just can't get what we need. So we're trying to be proactive and thinking about and planning for the start of next school year. And lastly, Julie Dreimann, Principal Dreimann, wasn't able to be with us when you accepted her retirement. And I thought that it would be only fitting to bring her back tonight and give you a chance to congratulate her and for her to say a couple things. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, and you can facilitate that.
Say, Jeff, can I make one comment? Is there any way we can rescind that resignation?
I don't think we're allowed to do that, Member Kettle. And with that, I will turn it over to Principal Dreimann.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Steve. And I actually, if you don't mind, I kind of wrote something out here. I think it'll help me get through this because I think what I found here in the last few weeks is when I have to, talk about retiring, I sometimes get a little choked up. So I'm just going to read you a little something here because I just want to, first of all, thank the school board members, and my district administration for your support over my 33 years here in Forest Lake area schools, and especially in my last 15 as the principal at Scandia Elementary. It's really hard to sum up 33 years of education here in just a couple minutes, but when I reflected on all of my years, the one thing that I continue to feel blessed about is that I was able here in Forest Lake to have so many different experiences. I started out as a 5th grade teacher at Columbus. I was a multi-age grades 1 through 3 teacher at Central Montessori. I was the dean at the high school, and then these last 15 years as Scandia's principal. I was even asked recently to list some of the committees that I've been on, and I was even surprised at how long that list was. But the bottom line was I just learned so much from so many talented educators and administrators, and that has just allowed me to grow and learn as I've been an educator. But my 15 years as principal at Scandia were certainly the capstone of my career, and they really shaped me as an educational leader. Working with the multitude of students, teachers, and families over these years can only be described as life-changing. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity. It was about 8 years ago, this time of year, that I came to ask you to support Scandia as we began the process of becoming an international baccalaureate school. And we became one of only 23 schools in the state that year to achieve that honor. And certainly your support was critical in that process. It made all the difference, not only to me, but to our teachers, because they knew that you had their back as they moved forward with changing some of their teaching practices and putting together those innovative teaching systems for our school. Also, your support as we rebuilt Scandia, basically from the ground up, as part of the reshaping opportunities for success, was really second to none. And our students and families have certainly appreciated that beautiful building, which is the home for the Scandia Stars. When my husband and I made this decision earlier this year that this would be our retirement year, well, little did we know that we'd leave during a pandemic. It has made for a very unique context in which to say goodbye. Yesterday, we had a car parade out at Scandia, and we had all the staff lined up out front, and the families could drive by. And we were there for over an hour, waving and cheering, and music was playing, and there was just lots of really positive emotion. We had we counted, we had 150 cars that came through during that time. But as I was driving home, I reflected that this is why I went into education and why I stayed for 33 years. The relationships and the family atmosphere that we've been able to create out at Scandia wouldn't happen unless I had the strong support of my school board and the district administration. I truly, truly thank you for continuing to be the strong, supportive cornerstone for Forest Lake area schools. And with that foundation, I know it'll always be possible for you to achieve the mission of Forest Lake area schools, to prepare and empower every student to thrive and contribute in an ever-changing world. You know, I received a retirement card yesterday that I think sums up what I hope my retirement can be. When yesterday's proud moments and happy memories meet today's bright hopes and dreams. I thank you for being such an important part of my proud moments and happy memories. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your 33 years of service, and I will give you a round of applause, even though it does not mean the same thing through the computer. It's certainly a different way for this to occur, but I really, truly thank you for the 33 years of service to the school district and all the families and students.
Well, thank you very much. I can't tell you what it means to me. This has, I had my teachers have been telling me, well, Julie, you're going to leave with a tear and a smile. And I agree. It's going to be lots of tears, though. But I am looking forward to the future. And I just can't tell you enough what this has been, you know, my career here at Forest Lake has meant to me. It's been everything. Thank you.
So real quick, Julie, I don't think you're old enough to retire. So, but I think that stand out about you to me are your energy, your enthusiasm, and your fantastic attitude. So thank you for giving us the very best of all of those for 33 years. We're going to really miss you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you.
Member Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, Julie, I'm gonna, it's funny because the school district and the people that work for it are like almost like a fabric, and you're just such an important part of that. And, we've just worked on so many things together. And the thing that I just, the principal positions are so critical for this district because they're a position where you have to be so intimately involved with the public. But on the other hand, you have to be this driver for academic achievement and just such a spiritual leader for that academic achievement. And in our district, you have so much fit that part of somebody who not only manages that people part of it, but does that driving the school further and further forward as far as academic achievement. And the international baccalaureate stuff has just been great. It's just such a feather in our cap for our district. And so good for the kids. And so from a school district perspective, thank you so much for all that great service and how you've been such a leader for that school. But also from a personal place, a couple of years ago, our niece came into our school district, and a lot of things happened one day before school started. And we were stressed out. How are we going to get her into school, involved with the kids and all this stuff? And from a personal standpoint, Kim and I were just panicking. And we called you and said, we've got to get her in right away. And you were just like, well, why don't you come and meet me? The day that school started. And came in about an hour before school started. And here was Julie, calm as a cucumber. All these kids are about to come to school for the first time in half an hour, and you're cool as a cucumber. Well, we'll do this, we'll meet here and do that. And it's just like, as parents, we couldn't have been in better hands, and our niece couldn't have been in better hands, and you worked with us all year. And so I just wanted to bring up that story because it shows that a school is a big thing and a small thing all at once, and you've fulfilled both roles so beautifully. And I just wanted to say thank you as a board member, but also as a parent. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rob. You're very welcome. You and I have worked together for many, many years, and having your own children and then your niece, I can't put into words. And how many years Kim did the carnival out there at Scandia? I mean, it's all good. It's all good.
Member Chair, this is Julie. Hi, Julie. I just wanted to thank you for your many years of service and your dedication to our students. They're very lucky to have you out at Scandia. And also, 33 years is quite an accomplishment. So, also, you don't look old enough to retire. That's for Jill. I like that comment. And doing the IB, all that extra work that went into making that school thrive, it's just really appreciated as a board member. And you're gonna be hard to replace, Julie. So we're gonna miss you. And thanks again, and enjoy your retirement. You've earned it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. And Julie, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Means a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't want to have the last word, but I might just thank you from myself and also from Karen. I think she and I gave you a surprise visit last year, and you were more than welcoming and dropped things to give us a tour. And I know that she would also want to congratulate you in person. She probably will the next time she sees you.
Yeah.
But I'm very new to the district, all things considered, but I've only heard good things from everybody. So if you do retirement half as well as principalship, you'll do really well.
Oh, well, thank you. And, as you could tell that day, Kate, I have no problem talking about Scandia Elementary. I could talk about that all day long. So it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. So thank you, everybody. I don't want to hold up the board meeting anymore, but it's been my life, and I love it, and I'm going to miss it terribly, and I sure hope that the future does hold some good things. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Julie. And don't worry about holding us up for a few minutes. 33 years service deserves probably a lot more than a couple of minutes in the board meeting, but it's what we have. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. And with that, Dr. Massey, did you have anything else for your report?
Well, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve items 6.1 through 6.5?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and with that, I would entertain discussion. I would like to start that off, though, by recognizing Mary Malrick and her 17 years as a teacher in Wyoming Elementary. She was a great teacher, well known in the Wyoming area. Phenomenal job. I know she this last year taught at Linwood, I believe. Am I right, Steve?
That's correct.
Yeah, but she's definitely missed out there at Wyoming, and we will miss her. And I hope she enjoys her retirement. Any further discussion on the consent agenda?
Member Chair, this is Alex. I just want to recognize the donations. I guess I have become the donation person, at least for the district, but I want to recognize that this month we got $19,055.80 in donations from 7 individuals and organizations. So on behalf of the district, certainly want to thank those individuals and organizations for those donations.
Thank you, Member Kettle. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Any other discussion? Hearing nothing, we'll take a roll call vote. Member Clerk, I believe we have to do a roll call for a virtual meeting.
Every meeting. Member Kettle?
Aye.
Member Kettle votes aye. Member Olson?
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield?
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson? Is absent, sorry. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran?
Aye.
Corcoran votes aye.
All right, motion passes. We will move on to action items. 7.1 strategic plan action items. Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me a minute to share the presentation for this part of the meeting, the action plan. All right, is that presenting on each of your screens? Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. As you're aware, the school board approved our strategic plan that was in process in the spring and early winter. And once approved, the school board directed administration to build the structure behind the strategic plan, including the action steps and strategies to meet the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. You'll recall that our strategic plan has a set of belief statements, and you can see those there. It's led by vision, excellence for every student every day, and a mission, prepare and empower every student to thrive in and contribute to an ever-changing world. How apropos that mission is today, given the world that we're now in. The strategic plan is actually then structured with 6 different focus areas. The first one here, excellence and high quality instruction. And then under each focus area, there's at least one, if not two goals that, 2 goals for each action step, along with objectives for, actually, let me back up. There's 1 or 2 goals for each focus area with related objectives for each of those goals. The task then was to build action steps to meet those focus areas, but specifically the objectives within the strategic plan. So I've asked the leaders for those action teams to join us tonight and walk us through the conversation they had and then where they landed for the action steps and strategies to carry out the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. We'll start tonight with excellence and high quality instruction, and Diane Georgie, Director Georgie, will walk us through that. Diane?
Yeah, Director Friedman and I both together co-facilitated the excellence and high quality instruction. And for that area, the first goal had to do with the world's best workforce. And we, as you know, have been working with the world's best workforce for the past several years. So this was really helpful as a committee for us to look at this more closely and think about areas for improvement in under the world's best workforce. So objective 1.1, we will annually evaluate the results of the 5 goal areas of the world's best workforce plan. We have been actively doing that, but the team, in thinking about it, came up with the action step, establish a process for openly communicating the results of the world's best workforce goals to all stakeholders, feeling that while we have communicated it, we probably want to look more closely at some of the stakeholders that may not be as clear on what it is we're doing with that. So this was a very helpful action step for us. So we will be working on establishing that process. Objective 1.2 had to do with establishing a process to adjust the efforts for each of those 5 goal areas under the world's best workforce. So our action step for that one, 1.2.1, establish a review team, including internal and external stakeholders, to annually examine the results of the world's best workforce goals and make recommendations for the continued improvement with consideration of the outcomes and strategies of the equity framework. And I think that many of you participated in the equity work and had a chance to dig into the equity framework that equity leadership team had gone through and developed. And throughout this strategic plan and the action steps that you'll hear about today, you'll see that there was a real effort to make sure that those two married together to really incorporate the equity framework along with the action steps that we're going through. Goal number 2 for us was attract, develop, and retain highly qualified, high-performing educators. So the first objective, identify characteristics of and establish consistent, high-quality instruction, has 2 action steps. One being create a team to determine the characteristics of high-quality instruction with consideration of the outcomes and strategies of the equity framework. And the second, establish a process for reviewing the implementation of effective and inclusive instructional practices. So this, again, fits really well with a lot of the equity work and the focus that we've had as we've gone through this year. And then the second objective, create and implement a plan for recruitment and retention of highly talented educators who reflect the demographic needs of our district, with the first action step being create a committee to examine and consider improvements to our current recruiting efforts to attract high quality candidates with consideration of the outcomes and strategies of the equity framework, and create a team to determine why educators leave and the assets of our district that may be reasons educators stay.
And then the next focus area, excellence in equitable learning opportunities. Principal Kenny Newby and his team did a lot of work on this, and he was co-chair for this team with Brad Ward and Carolyn Latati. Kenny, you want to walk us through these action steps?
Sure. I think Diane did a good job of highlighting that a lot of the work around the equity framework is highlighted in many of these goals, and you'll see a lot of that work in goal number 3 specifically. We as a team, we landed on 3 objectives for goal number 3, and each of the objectives will have 2 action steps. As we as a team were working through creating these action steps, we kept coming back to a feeling that we had the need to create an advisory type committee that would kind of guide a lot of this work. And so instead of putting that into each action step, we just made a note of that right under the goal there. And that read that we want to establish a district equity advisory committee, name group specifically to be determined still. That includes internal and external stakeholders, students, parents, guardians, licensed and classified staff, administrators, and community members who demographically represent the school district student body. This committee will meet regularly on an ongoing basis to create plans and monitor progress on the objectives and action steps outlined below. So our first objective, 3.1, by 2021, to create and implement a plan to enhance cultural competency among staff and students. The 2 action steps we landed on for that, action step 3.1.1, would be to create a needs assessment to identify specific topics related to educational equity to all staff groups in the district, including licensed staff, administrators, classified staff, and students. We felt that needs assessment would really give us a lot of good information to kind of drive the rest of our work. And then, which leads into action step 3.1.2. Based on that needs assessment, provide ongoing developmentally appropriate professional development for each grade level, instructional level, program, or employee group, focused on culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive school leadership, culturally responsive student leadership, and other topics related to educational equity. The second objective for goal number 3, 3.2, is to identify and develop consistent and regular activities to make all students feel welcome at all grade levels. We know we have a lot of good things happening in the district, and we want to make sure that we're highlighting those and continuing to build on that and build some equity across our schools as well. So action step 3.2.1 would be to create a process to evaluate whether current instructional practices and extracurricular programming promote a sense of belonging, safety, and being valued for each student, including identifying strengths and areas for growth at each grade level across the district. And action step 3.2.2 would be, based on this review process, create and implement a plan that addresses what activities or practices the district should keep doing, stop doing, and or start doing in order to create a more consistent and equitable approach to community building and asset-based education for students. The third objective our team landed on, objective 3.3, by 2023, establish a process to annually identify and develop programming and practices to eliminate gaps in learning, opportunities, and resources across the district. This objective also comes with 2 action steps now. 3.1 would be to create a process to conduct an annual equity review, which gathers data and identifies inequities and gaps between student groups and between programs and buildings. Focus areas will include learning and achievement, participation in and access to opportunities, and distribution of financial, material, and human resources. The equity review will also highlight and share successful equity initiatives in order to build on and expand their impact in the district. And the final action step for goal 3, or actually step 3.3.2, is to implement a process to share results of the equity review broadly within the district, including staff, students, families, school board members, and other relevant groups, and to use findings to monitor and adjust equity efforts within the district. I was really proud of the group and the work that we did, and we have some awesome parents and teachers and other staff members that, as we know, are really driven by this work, and I'm really excited about what can come from goal number 3.
And then the next focus area, excellence in career, college, and future preparedness. JP Jacobson and Jim Caldwell spearheaded the team doing this work. JP?
Yes, thank you, Steve. And yes, Jim Caldwell helped me in co-facilitating this group, and we had a great group of educators all really excited about this particular focus area. When we think about the meat and potatoes of our academic program and the programs that we have to grow our kids, we were really focusing on how can we make sure our kids have the preparedness to make whatever choice they want upon graduation to live a holistic life, whether that be college or just a healthy lifestyle. And so we had 2 goals. The first goal, develop and enhance each student's academic, technical, and professional skills to equip them in identifying and preparing for their career path. We had 3 objectives here. One was around each one was around communication with families. One was around guidance with kids, and one was around the program development itself. And so, the first objective here, establish a system through which each student receives guidance that help them identify and prepare for their career path. And we had 2 action steps. The first being to create a mechanism at the middle school and high school focused on supporting college preparedness, career exploration, and the development of key life, academic, and professional skills. The second action step was to identify activities and develop an annual schedule that assists students and families in successfully transferring or transitioning from one academic level to the next, including after graduation. The second objective here was around that family piece. Establish a process to ensure parents and guardians have the resources and information necessary to support their child's intended career path. So first, the first action step was to conduct an audit of what our current established practices are for communicating with families in terms of dates, events, and publications. With that, the second action step was to develop high-quality resources that include our updated district branding to help families understand our program and district vision. And the third action step there was to create a strategy to work with families as they gain an understanding of developing career and life goals and connect those with post-graduation plans. The third objective in this area was by 2025, establish programming to ensure students have the academic background and skills to be successful in their chosen career and personal life. And again, we started with develop a way through which middle level students have gateway experiences in each of their career pathways. We just felt like giving kids an opportunity at the middle school level to really taste each of our career pathways so they make an informed decision on which they want to choose as they move through high school, knowing that we're not going to lock anybody into one, but that they get a chance to start to tinker with those even in the middle school years. The second action step was to identify ways to ensure that students learn about career options and real life applications that allow for a full and enriched lives, and for that to happen in each of our courses. The third action step there was to review and expand pathways tailored to the needs of all students and prepare them to graduate on time and with the skills necessary to be successful in life. And the last action step with this one was to establish an E12, early childhood through grade 12 scope and sequence for the delivery and learning of identified skills and dispositions. And so then we had goal number 5. You don't see it there, but goal number 5 was to engage students in learning systems that fostered life skills both in and out of the classroom. And so we had 2 objectives here. The first being around spending some time identifying what those skills should be. So identifying, a first objective was to identify the essential skills and dispositions necessary for students' future success in life and in their career. We just know that in our lives, academics are important, but those skills and dispositions so much play a huge role in our success as well. So to begin that, our first action step, or our only action step for that objective, was to gather input from industry stakeholders to identify what those essential skills and dispositions are that are necessary for future success in life and their career. And then the second objective in this area was around encouraging the pursuit of student passions beyond the classroom through activities such as arts, academics, athletics, and service opportunities for all students. We had 3 action steps here. First being to conduct an audit of current practices at the elementary, the middle, and high school levels that encourage passions beyond the classroom. Second action step was to, with that information in hand, develop a gap analysis between what is currently offered and what student interests aren't being met, or if there are future life proficiencies that need augmenting. As an example, we talked a lot about service learning and whether we have enough offerings for kids at different levels to get involved in that sort of civic-minded activities. And then that was just an example there. And then the third action step in this area was to use the results of the gap analysis to drive the refining or the refinement of co-curricular, extracurricular, and learning activities beyond the classroom, and a mechanism to encourage students to access those.
Thank you, JP. The next focus area, excellence in personal well-being in a safe and respectful learning environment. Kelly Lessman and Sarah Stratton, is that right, Kelly? I believe was working with you on this area. Kelly?
Yep. So we have the safe and inclusive learning environment that fosters personal well-being, with the objective of number 6.1 is to develop and implement teaching practices throughout the district that ensure students attain social and emotional health. And to do that, we will, with the action steps 6.11 and 6.12, we will gain feedback from staff and students and parents and community members, just exactly what we're looking for the social emotional health of students. And then we will use similar to the curriculum review that Director Georgie uses for other content areas, to look at the curriculum instruction so we can get a consistent basis throughout the district for social emotional learning throughout each building. And then objective 6.2, at the end of that, once we have the curriculum determined, then we will work on the professional development for the staff in order to implement the social emotional development of the adults, and then also preparing to teach the skills to the students. The advantage of having this strategic planning goal number 6 is that we are also able to secure a grant through the Department of Education for the next 2 years of $18,000 over the next 2 years to a leadership team will be going to the Department of Ed and doing a community of practice that will guide us actually through these action steps. So I have the lucky goal number 6 that also comes with some funding.
Funding, actually, Kelly, that you and Joe Krautkramer crafted and put together. So it wasn't just handed to you. You guys went out and sought those dollars.
Yes, I think it was.
Go ahead.
I think there were 18 districts out of 54 that applied. So we were one of those few districts.
Way to go. The fifth of our 6 focus areas, excellence in collaboration with families, partners, and the community. Corey, Director McKinnon and Andy Stoicky spearheaded this committee. Corey?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Massey. We had 2 goals here. Goal 7, providing communication that enhances collaboration between our school and families. And most certainly, we began our action step process pre-COVID-19 and had the unfortunate opportunity to see the necessities that come out through our action steps play out right before our eyes through the development of our action steps. So The timing was actually quite relevant in allowing us to be very comprehensive in the development of these action steps. So some of these are in play much sooner than we had anticipated, but as we've seen with so many things around our current reality, it's pushing our movements forward, and we're making them in the most positive fashion. So objective 7.1 by 2021, create and implement a plan to foster communication and collaboration between school and families to support the needs and achievement of all students. So our team, which was made up of both folks from within the school district as well as outside of the district, was quite comprehensive in generating these action steps. In 7.1.1, we wanted to create a list of district platforms of communication already in place. We know that we have so many forms of communication that we utilize, this being one of them, and we need to have an understanding of what those forms of communication are. So we want to analyze the number of students and families utilizing each platform and the process by which those lists are developed. And then we want to further identify each platform's purpose, capabilities, and limitations. Most certainly knowing that that's not only helpful for our families, that's helpful for our staff, that's helpful for our new staff coming in so that we can create as many efficiencies as possible. Action step 7.1.2, create and implement a survey reaching all stakeholders using a variety of survey methods to identify gaps in communications between schools and families, best ways to communicate with non-English speaking families. And last one came from the realtor in our group who said that this was very important in their line of work, which was the preferred method of communication families prefer or want or desire to be used, so that we can make sure that we're reaching all families. And this was one that we've seen play out many times over under our current reality. Action step 7.1.3, develop and implement a plan to address the communication needs and gaps based on the previous action step survey results. And then goal number 8, seek out and enhance and build family and community partnerships to meet the needs of each student. So objective 8.1, by 2021, we want to identify and strengthen community and school and community partnerships that contribute to the district's ability to accomplish its mission and vision. Action step 8.1.1 that we came up with was identify the existing and potential strategic relationships and community partnerships and develop ways to highlight and promote such partnerships, i.e. Facebook, websites, and other various platforms which we can really celebrate the partnerships that we have that we know is so paramount to moving our district and our community forward. Action step 8.1.2, we want to periodically bring community partners and community leaders together for collaboration, idea sharing, mapping out strategic relationships, alignment, and effectiveness. And we actually saw that just happen organically within our group's work, and how we would get off on certain tangents of idea sharing where it was benefiting both the groups that were community stakeholders as well as district leaders here that were generating this work. And then the last one here under this one, action step 8.1.3, create and leverage platforms by which the district and or community can communicate needs and wish lists that the district and or community may want to help with. We see every month we get that amazing list that our community generates through the district's donations. But so often we do hear that there might be other ways at which the district and or the community can support one another if only those needs and desires are known across those relationships. And lastly, objective 8.2, by 2025, provide regular and consistent learning opportunities for and collaboration with the community that is responsive to its needs. Action step 8.2.1, we want to develop and implement an ongoing community needs assessment, including utilize district partnerships to determine those community learning needs and really have an understanding of what those learning needs are. And then action step 8.2.2 is the response to that, which is collaborating with individuals and groups within and outside the district to develop and implement a plan to address those learning needs as determined by the previous community needs assessment. So overall, very comprehensive plan and amazing work done by our group.
And then the last of our 6 focus areas, excellence in communication and outreach. This area was led by our communications coordinator, Renee Reedy, and our marketing consultant, Barb Pedersen. Renee?
Yes, thank you. So we have goal number 9 to start with, create a community of communities. community is not a one-way street, me to you. It's a group activity, and so we started with a big group. So in action step 9.1.1, we're going to host an annual spring and fall community gathering to get input from folks that are part of our community and larger, have larger voices in our community, stakeholders, business groups, sports, faith leaders, etc., and really gather some input and feedback from that group. Now, as we continue meeting with that group, we'll be able to provide feedback back to that group as we have some things to report. But to start with, would be more of an input gathering. And then in Objective 9.2, start to craft specific initiatives out of that input by creating a steering committee. We're sort of taking a page out of the process we used for strategic plan with a steering committee, a little, not small yet, but smaller than the one in 9.1.1. And then that group starts to create some specific goals and action steps that are a little bit more on the day-to-day level. And then district staff teams take those goals and carry those out in 9.2.2. I also had goal 10, which is promote and celebrate the opportunities that make Forest Lake Area School District an education leader. And we start with boldly promoting the abundance of opportunities that the district offers. And we do this by having a district staff committee to set some annual goals and objectives. Communication and promotion tends to go in a cyclical nature, and so we want to continue to evaluate what's going on, what people are looking for, what we should be doing next. Not today for what we should be doing tomorrow, but maybe this month for what we should be doing in the next 6 to 12 months. So start to evaluate those things, establish whatever appropriate staff teams are needed to carry those goals out each year, and then report back. Now, even though we didn't specify in the goal 10 area, some of these things could be reported back to the committee in goal 9, talking about promotion and community building and such. Then in objective 10.2, we'd like to broaden our reach to not only within the district, but beyond the district boundaries, and start looking more toward how we can put ourselves on the map, so to speak. So we need to find some of the things in our district that are really exciting to people who aren't maybe in our local neighborhood, and start working on ways to identify those and promote them. So 10.2.1 starts taking an inventory of those items. 10.2.2 is just increasing our staff awareness. We have hundreds of staff that do amazing, cool things all the time, and just helping them know what it is that somebody maybe in Minnetonka or Egan might be interested in Forest Lake, and so we can get that to us so we can put that out there on a bigger platform. And then, of course, having a working group to identify and do that promotion. So those are steps under Goal 10.
All right. Did the presentation come down? I think it did.
Yes.
I have to say, I am super excited for the comprehensive strategic plan. When we started this process, I wasn't quite sure where we were going with all of this work, but I'm proud to say and excited for how this plan will lay the foundation for our next steps as a district. It charters us in the right direction and moves us forward, even though there's so much uncertainty in the times that we're in. This strategic plan is comprehensive. It brings all of our dimensions together, led by equity and student achievement, and all of the supports that come with that important work. So a big shout out to the teams that presented here tonight and their amazing work. Clearly our next step is to get to work and begin to carry out the different steps that we've laid out here. So, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Massey, and thank you to everybody who worked on the strategic action plans. They look great, and a lot of work to get to this point, and it's interesting to see some of this play out in these times and how it fits in. With that, no action being required, we will move on to 7.2, the fiscal year 20 budget adjustments. Director Martini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share with you folks my screen. Hopefully it will come up. Member Ketto did mention that this was a focus at the last Finance Committee meeting. That might have been the first time some of the board members saw it, but also just April 30th, I think we went into an extensive discussion of this. And as you folks are aware, the Finance Committee reviews our expenditure patterns for not only each month compared to the last year, compared to a prior year to that, but also the revenue. Normally, we would only probably have a couple of adjustments, but this year, this is our third budget adjustment, primarily resulting from the COVID-19 operational impacts. In terms of the general fund, you can see we've got some offsetting revenue adjustments, so the net amount is zero. Increased expenditures to the tune of about $125,000. But as was noted earlier, the major impact that we're facing, food service with a deficit of $650,000. When we share a later agenda item, our first review of the FY21 budget, you'll note that that will take them into a deficit position as of June 30th, 2020. With the community ed reduction, that won't necessarily take them into a deficit position, but it will eliminate most of their balance with an $850,000 decline. And finally, we did receive those bond proceeds, so we're going to make some adjustments on the revenue side as well as expenditure side for our budget in the construction fund. So at that point in time, I'd ask you for approval of the third and final budget adjustments to the 1920 revenue and expenditure items.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Member Clerk, would you please say a roll call?
Member Olson?
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield?
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson is absent. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luther votes aye. Member Corcoran?
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto?
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye.
All right, motion passes. I didn't see anybody unmute their mic under 7.1, and I didn't ask for any comments, so I apologize for that. And if any member wanted to comment on 7.1 before we move to 7.3, I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Member Chair, this is Member Rayfield. I just wanted to thank the groups that put the work into this. I know we were all involved in kind of getting it started, but seeing the action plans like this is really nice. It looks great. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that put a lot of work into that.
Member Chair, this is Jill. I will second what Rob said, but I also, what really struck me is goal number 2 has to do with retaining and keeping qualified employees. And I just kind of wonder if there's any way we can use Julie Dreimann in that, because she kind of embodies what we're looking for, and she stayed for 33 years. So somehow if we can incorporate her, her input or something on goal number 2, I just thought, wow, we can't let that pass us.
Yeah, she's a true ambassador for us. We can put her as a plant in all of our schools and persuade people that this is the best place on earth to work.
She could be like Larry and retire for 2 weeks and then come back. So
there you go.
Any further discussion on 7.1? Hearing nothing, we will move on to 7.3 then. Director Martini.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Internal Revenue Service is responsible for enforcing compliance with the Internal Revenue Code and all of the Treasury regulations. So the IRS encourages bond and securities issuers, such as ourselves, to adopt a post-compliance or post-issuance debt compliance policy and implement procedures to safeguard against post-issuance violations. We also want to comply with Securities and Exchange Commission rules. So Ellers Incorporated has provided our district with an updated post-issuance debt compliance policy. These procedures, along with the policy, have been reviewed and approved by our bond counsel. So we would ask the school board to approve this via the school board resolution.
Do we have a motion to approve the resolution for post-issuance debt compliance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Is there any discussion?
Quick discussion. I just, I hope that this puts to rest some people's fears that we're taking out more money than we can handle, and just the generalized fear in the community when school districts start to borrow money. This is a document that I think, is it publicly available?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a good thing to just point at. Is it posted somewhere publicly also?
It will be once approved.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be helpful with that then.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Okay. Member Tyson is absent. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran?
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto?
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Olson?
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield?
Aye.
That's it.
All right, motion passes. Sorry, I had my mic on mute. And
It's like, like the pregnant pause. Did I forget somebody?
All right. Thank you, Member Luthner. Moving on to 7.4, ratify the principals agreement. Dr. Massey.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm excited to present this tentative settlement agreement and recommend your approval tonight. But let me walk through a couple of changes. I would first like to highlight that this agreement is within the parameters that you provided for us when we set out to begin negotiations with the principal group. The first change to the contract you will find on page 6 of the agreement related to group insurance. There's a clause in the principals of contract and other contracts and agreements in the district where principals are allowed to move unused family medical contribution or funds to a health reimbursement account. And this agreement puts a cap on those dollars for principals hired after July 1, 2020. And the cap would be 5 times the annual family premium. Currently, there's no cap on the total dollars that a principal can contribute to the health reimbursement account. So that, I think, is a solid financial piece for the district. The next change to the agreement you'll find on page 13. Now, there are a couple changes that are identified on that page. The first is striking the cap on 403B contribution from the district standpoint. For those of you that have approved super contracts, director, principal contracts in the past, you know that we, from time to time, recommend that we increase that 403B district contribution cap. And when there are members of a particular group that push up against that cap, we come to the board to recommend that we move that cap to a higher level. So in an effort with this group not to continue to come back to the board when members of this group push up against that cap, we would recommend here that we eliminate that cap altogether. So there's a $5,000 maximum annual contribution to 403B, but this would remove the lifetime cap for each principal participating in the 403B plan. And then the next change is related to the unrequested leaves of absence language that actually covers multiple pages in this agreement, beginning on page 13. In essence, we strike all old language related to unrequested leave of absence with this agreement. And you might recall that the Minnesota legislature eliminated statutory language related to ULA and then recommended or leaves it up to districts or public entities to establish their own ULA language. So in extensive conversation with the principal group and many long conversations, quite honestly, we were able to come to an agreement on new language, eliminating the previous language and establishing new language. In essence, the ULA applies to a situation. I'm not going to read the language. I'm going to try to describe what's going on here. If we were in a situation where we needed to reduce a position, you can imagine a budgetary situation where that is the recommendation from administration or the direction the board is moving administration to take. The board would identify the number, the number of positions or position that would be eliminated or reduced from the budget. But then therein lies the question, how do we determine which principal? So we established a process to identify which principal would be identified for being placed on unrequested leave. And what we established is that, first of all, we would implement a fairly comprehensive principal evaluation process that would be conducted by the direct supervisor. In the case of the principal, that would be me. So each principal would get a comprehensive principal evaluation each year. And in that evaluation, there would be a designation as proficient or less than proficient. If a principal obtains a mark or an evaluation of less than proficient in a given year, that would then place that principal, if you will, in a category of principals that would be considered first for an unrequested leave, to be placed on unrequested leave. So if a principal receives a less than proficient review, then in a 3-year period of time, that principal or the principals in that group would be first considered for unrequested leave, along with other criteria: licensure of the principal, experience in a principal position, including principal experience outside the district. And then, of course, related to that would be the principal's suitability for the remaining assignments. Then, logically, you go to, well, what if all principals are considered proficient? And I could certainly see a case where all principals would be identified as proficient. We would hope for that to be the case. If we're in the unfortunate situation of having to reduce a position or more than one position, then we identify the criteria that would be, or the set of variables that would be considered in determining which principal would be placed on unrequested leave. First, licensure of the principal, experience in a principal position, including experience outside the district, and individual principal suitability for the remaining positions. So it no longer is last in, first out, or the last person hired automatically being identified as the person that would be placed on unrequested leave. So there would be a number of factors that would be considered. Overarching to that would be suitability for the remaining positions, and giving latitude for that analysis to determine which principal would be placed on unrequested leave. We believe that that is a good position for the district as we place leaders in the remaining positions that would remain after the budget reduction. So that, and then there's language about recall and so on that is similar to what you'd find in an unrequested leave situation. So that is a summary of the unrequested leave pieces. And then finally, on the last page of the contract would be the salary adjustments. In the first year, there's an overall uniform salary increase of 3% and a uniform salary increase of 2% in the second year. The first year being the current year we're in, 1920, second year being 2021. And 3 and 2 is within the board parameters that you established for administration as we negotiated this contract. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would turn it over to you. And administration would recommend approval.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the principals agreement as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second? A motion and a second. Discussion. Any discussion?
A couple of us, if you wanted to call, we all went off mute.
I can't, because I'm on my phone, I can't see who went off mute. So, Member Listener, if you just want to start.
I thank you for all the work that went into this and that it meets our parameters. And I'm glad that we have a clear method of kind of looking at not just time and grade, but skills. And so we have the option to keep the best if it ever comes down to it. And hopefully that never happens. But in the event it's going to be an emotional thing. And I'm glad to have a set of rules that can guide the process as dispassionately as possible so people know that it would be a business decision.
Thank you, Member Luthner. Any other discussion? I see Member Corcoran.
Yes, Member Chair. I just wanted to recognize the fact that there had been some pay freezes for admins, and realizing that they're a wonderful group and work hard for our district, and the loyalty and dedication they put forward, and that they stuck with us during the lean times, and really happy we stuck in that we gave them a nice increase due to our parameters, and that we always wish we could give more. But thank you for their years of service, and I'm just happy to approve this contract.
Thank you, Member Corcoran. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none. Member Clerk, would you take a roll call?
Yes. Member Peterson.
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye, and Member Tyson is absent.
All right, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, if I can just add a quick comment. You've heard me say it before, and my comment comes with a lot of paradox. On one hand, I'm a firm believer that we cannot have great schools without great principals. It is absolutely true and critical. At the same time, we know that the great work in school happens at the classroom level. It's not about the principal. At the same time, you can't have a great school without great principals. We have an incredible group of principals that are in the trenches every day doing amazing work with a real vision for providing the best every single day for kids. So I'm proud to work with this team, and I appreciate your approval.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. With that, we will move on to 8-1, and I concur with your sentiments. We have a great principal group, and they do a phenomenal job for us. We'll move on to 8-1, first review of fiscal year 21 budget. Director Martini.
Thank you very much. I'm going to walk you folks through 12 of my favorite slides. This is only a first review, no action requested. As a matter of fact, we'll still be working with Finance Committee. We'll still be working with Corey McKinnon, with Kathy Hoff to fine-tune some of the numbers that you're going to see this evening. So these are not final numbers, although they're very close. This first review, a year ago, we did, I believe, in the beginning of June, as opposed to in May. So you folks, as school board members, ultimately will need to approve a budget by June 30th, 2020 for the 21 fiscal year. So you'll have more time to look at this and walk through it. But I believe one of the biggest factors going into the situation is just COVID-19 and how that is going to end up being impacting our whole operation. These numbers you've already seen, shared with you in the budget adjustments that you approved, but I want to share with you at the state level what we've got. So the deficit that just was projected by the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget showed revenues dropping $3.6 billion, and that the state would expend $391 million more. Also taking down the stadium reserve funds. So what was once a $1.5 billion surplus has now become almost a $2.5 billion deficit. And that's a result of the dials. I like the governor's dials. They really help us understand where we're at. As we make projections for next year's school year, it's likely that the school setting will be flipped all the way up to in-person school learning. I'm not sure how far we're going to be able to move the other dials as time passes, but all of our assumptions are in-school learning. If that isn't the ultimate guidance that is provided by the MDE in the state, then we might need to make some further adjustments to what you see this evening. With almost all 50 states having dials tightened down to this extent, this is what the gross domestic product for the United States looks like. That drop in the curve is what happens when 30 million people are on unemployment. It's rather significant. What it will mean for schools in Minnesota, you've probably seen this chart before. In the past, we've had in the recent past, we've had 3 years where we had the same funding, or 2 years of frozen funding, 97 and 99, then fiscal 2003 through 2005, and fiscal 2009 through 2011. And so the legislature has begun talking and exploring the ideas of unallotment. I think our lobbyist, Mitch Berggren, from the Jacobson Law Group, was present at one of those presentations. And the history of unallotment is if there is a balanced budget and all of a sudden it becomes unbalanced, the governor, in consultation with other folks after drawing down the reserves, can unallot unexpended funds within the budget. Now, it was enacted back in 1939 after the Great Depression. In recent history, it's only been used 6 times, 3 times by Governor Pawlenty, and that's part of what you see here. Some of the problems caused by the changes in the administration prior to his, without bringing on sales tax as a revenue, for example. He did it 3 times. Rudy Perpich did it once. Governor Al Quie did it a couple of times. And so it's likely that we may see this play out possibly now, but even if not now, more likely over the next biennium. And I think the Pioneer Press said it best with their headline, "Poof, the surplus is now a deficit." I do believe Forest Lake, though, remains better off than others, and it's a result of the things that our school district has been able to accomplish with careful attention to the budget. As you know, we have eliminated the bus purchasing for fiscal 21. We'll be leasing additional buses that were already approved at a couple board meetings ago. But we've also done a little bit of right sizing. with other items, and a component of that is with staffing. So our first pass and what this looks like for all of the funds you see on the screen here, we're still projecting the general fund to have about $2.5 million fund balance. The projected food service goes negative by $180,000. Community ed still with a $200,000 fund balance, and the construction fund has that infusion for focusing on the athletic fields as well as the Central Learning Center, and then debt service and OPEB debt service. And we're presenting a balanced budget for general fund, for food service, for community education. So not much improvement on fund balances, but we are hopeful that the food service fund ekes out a positive fund balance at the end of 21. I apologize for the typo there. It should say fund balance 6/30/2021 on the bottom of the page. So what does that mean specifically for the general fund? Well, we were able to identify most of the revenues beginning with our property tax process and with the projection of students. So with a projection of 100 kids less than the year before, and a 2% increase that's already in law in the formula, $77,850,000 is the the revenue budget. And we've got a $77,847,000 FY21 expenditure budget. That's on the far right-hand side of this slide. I've also got fiscal 20 in the middle, just for comparison purposes. With that, I just want to share with you, ultimately, when we do get a budget approved, hopefully by our second meeting in June, we'll be bringing something, the first meeting in June, for your approval. That this really is just a roadmap. It's going to need to be updated periodically. There's a lot of things that happen, a lot of things that change, and our normal process is to do a review and modification in the fall based on the exact enrollment changes we've seen and any updates to employee contracts and limits that we can share with you. Later in the spring of the school year, we always have our auditors come in and do a review of the revenues, and we do take stock of what was our experience. What was our experience from the winter? So with that, I can stand for any comments or questions that you might have, and just open it up to the floor.
All right. Do we have any questions?
Go ahead, Rob.
Director Martini, how do you think we're going to be affected as far as like the services we'll need to provide? Because a number of parents are going to be really economically challenged. How do you think that's going to play into some of the additional services we need to provide?
You know, that's a really good question. If we are looking at increasing numbers of people that are going to be qualifying for, say, free and or reduced lunches, that could have a positive impact on some of the revenues in the general fund, besides allowing more folks to seek food out of the food service fund. And it might allow us some flexibility. But I think your question is hitting the nail on the head, and we're going to look to guidance from the Minnesota Department of Education as to how far we can go and what we can extend, because we do a lot for the community. That's absolutely true.
Thank you.
Member Luthner?
Mine is regards to buses. You put that we did do the lease option. Are there any clauses in there that if we are not busing students, if the very worst happens and we don't require busing in September, or is there any clause looking towards that possibility?
No, we don't have the ability to break those leases, but they are only 2-year leases. I would be hopeful if we weren't running school that we would still have the similar funding as we did for the last quarter of this school year, but you never know.
Given that our transportation is always sort of deficit spending, that's even harder to say in a shrinking budget year.
I know that they wouldn't write the leases with such an ability to break them, so it's unfortunate, but I understand.
Okay.
And I would add to that, one of the added expenses to transportation are the miles we drive, and we're clearly driving a lot fewer miles in distance learning. We are picking up kids for childcare and providing meals, but if we were in an unfortunate situation where we weren't open at the start of the year, we wouldn't be driving those excess miles. So there would have that, probably, albeit rather small, positive impact to the budget, but it won't be that big. We'll lose that strain to the budget.
All right. Do we have any further discussion?
Jeff, this is Julie. I just had a question for Director Martini about maybe some students might be needing more assistance that maybe hadn't qualified in the past for extra assistance. So is that also going to be a budgetary concern for the fall?
We still have a lot of the supports that we had in the current year, and so we're pleased with our abilities to equitably service all kids. I do believe, as we keep learning more and more about COVID and as it projects itself down the road, that schools are going to be open, schools are going to be operational. It doesn't feel that way today, but things are going to have to change because parents are going to need to get back to work.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, thank you, Director Martini. And we will move on to the first reading of the 21-22 and 22-23 academic calendars.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Georgie was instrumental in pulling the team together to consider this calendar, so I will let her provide some detail and walk us through these two calendars.
Sure, we do this every 2 years, and we look 2 years out and do the following 2-year calendars. The team always includes the activities director to have an eye on when activities occur during the year, a secondary administrator, elementary administrator, as well as 2 teacher representatives from the secondary level and 2 from the elementary level to really be sure we're thinking about the implications for where breaks fall, where quarters land, how holidays and PE days are scheduled in there. So as you look at the calendars you have in front of you, I think you'll find that both of these are quite traditional calendars. It worked out well that our new educator days in both of those years fall pretty much where they have typically in the past few years because of where Labor Day fell. As you look into the year a little bit further, we've got the MEA placement with the elementary conferences just before MEA. That shifts back to the way we've done it in the past. When you look further down, it's spring break usually that people pay attention to, and that was a big conversation around how activities fall, where the quarter break ends. So in both of those years, again, we have spring break falling in the first full week of March. And in both calendars, we were able to end the last student day on a Thursday with the teacher work day and wrapping up the year with report cards and final grading and marking periods on the Friday of that week. So everything seemed to go actually pretty smoothly and very traditionally in both of these 2 calendars. I am open to any questions you might have as you look them over.
You mentioned a point on the 2021 calendar in terms of the late start that year.
Member Luthner? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
On the 21-22, excuse me.
Yes, because of where Labor Day fell that year, yes.
Yeah, it's a very late start, which pushes everything back.
Yes, absolutely. Good point.
All right. Do we have any other
Member Chair?
questions? Yes.
I would just like to thank the committee because, before I got on the school board, I never realized what a complicated nightmare that calendar is. And so I just, my hat goes off to everybody involved in working through that. And it's just amazing that there is an actual solution that comes out the other end of that machine. So thank you.
I would concur, Member Rayfield, and the passion that goes around the starts of certain events for families is quite evident as well through that process.
Absolutely.
Two things. So super thank you on the spring break placement. I've heard nothing but complaints about it being at the end of March. So I'm glad we could pull it forward, however that happened. And just a question, and I know it wasn't actually popular, but starting before Labor Day, that worked out nicely that year. Is that ever on the table?
Only when we have construction happening in the district that would require it. So we were able to make that adjustment when we had the bond happening and some of our buildings were under construction. But without that, we don't have the ability to start before Labor Day unless the state legislature makes a change and allows us to.
Okay. So it's not us or board, it's state.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All right. Thank you, Director Georgie. With that, we'll move on to the first reading of the Elementary Attendance Boundaries Policy 502.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elementary boundaries are established by the school board. The School Board Policy Committee has reviewed this policy and are recommending for first reading tonight a couple of changes to this policy. The first would be in clearly some language cleanups in item 1, and item 2 really is some cleanup language there as well. But it states what would be considered when making boundary changes. Attendance boundaries will be established by considering school building capacities, geographical boundaries, distance from students' homes, and other relevant factors. And then adding 2 other pieces. Requests for in-district connections will be considered based upon building and grade level capacity at the prospective elementary school, as well as available programming to serve students' needs. And then students' families' requests for building boundary changes should submit such requests to the superintendent. So those would be some adjustments that are being recommended to this policy.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. Do we have any discussion? Member Luthner?
Yep. This is a policy that we went over in the committee, and it's a shame that Member Tyson isn't here also because it was a bit of a debate, and she held down the side of there are very, very big concerns in the community when people start talking about boundary changes. So not trying to make it a thing that happens just because it happens, but I felt strongly not in an opposite direction, but in a tangential direction that there is no mechanism to ask for a boundary change. And nobody's talking about moving it miles, but there are cases where enclave of families might say, we really would prefer this way or that way, and there just was no mechanism to be heard. So the intention behind this was to have a mechanism in the policy that is clearly and easy to find, that has a direction for somebody or a group of families that feel strongly, have a way to be heard on a real level. So they're not just calling somebody who has to figure out who to talk to. It gives clear direction. It should go to the superintendent, who from there would consider all the options and who's making the requests, if it's with one person in the middle of nowhere, or if it's 25 families asking for something pretty reasonable. So it's not a trivial request, but it's also not something that shouldn't be honored if possible.
Thank you, Member Luthner. Is there any other discussion?
Member Luthner is absolutely correct that boundary changes are a big deal to families. We would be directed by the school board to consider boundary changes based on the factors identified here, and there would be an extensive work to identify appropriate changes and related communication. And to be clear, the review of this policy and updates to the policy does not in any way suggest that there's conversation to adjust boundaries at this time.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Massey. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we will move on to the first reading, short-term classified substitutes policy 434.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, thank you. This policy establishes the hourly salary wage for our short-term classified employees. As you can see in this policy, we are recommending a $1 increase for those various positions that are identified in this particular policy. This is getting substitutes for any position when the employment rate prior to COVID was in the 3.5% range. We're kind of in a different situation now, but we'll be back there someday, hopefully soon, and securing substitutes for these positions and teaching positions you'll see in a moment are tough to secure, and a rate increase we think will help in some way, and we have not had an adjustment to these wages in several years.
Any discussion on the policy 434? Member Luthner?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I have things. This is a compliment to whoever thought of the verbiage around retention. So having an extra bonus for having, 40 days within the year?
Yeah, I think it's 50 days within
50
the year.
days. Is that the calendar year or the school year?
That'd be an actual 50 work days within the year.
But within the calendar year, like 2020 or the school year 1920?
Director Friedman?
It effectively means the school year because we have exceptionally minimal usage of substitutes outside of the school year.
But the school year just bridges 2 years. So just making sure.
Oh, it refers to a fiscal year.
Okay. So it's basically because I told this as a possibility because it was public to a substitute friend. She started counting in her book to see how close she was, and she was really pleased by that sort of a nod towards loyalty.
All right. Thank you, Member Luthner. Member Olson, did you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know what the budget impact of this is, but well worth it. I mean, $13 an hour isn't all that much to begin with, and they're not getting any benefits. So, the more we can offer these people, the better. So I'm all for this change.
Thank you, Member Olson, and agreed. Any further discussion?
I would add that any budget increase, in some ways, is offset by having to pay overtime for some of these folks to fill unfilled positions.
Understood. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will move on to the first reading, short-term classified subs. Oh, we just did that one. Sorry. Discipline policy 515.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This policy is reviewed annually, and we have representatives from the high school, the middle school, and the elementary who take a look at each element of this particular policy, and that committee is recommending to the policy committee changes to student attire on page 7, added language clarification and added language to item number 2, adding 3 bullets being included in this particular language: tobacco, alcohol, drug, or paraphernalia, and offensive messages, pictures, or symbols. Next, violence violent language or images, and lastly, sexually explicit or pornographic language or images. So that would be added language to this policy of forbidden student attire. And then lastly, there's updates to the part of this policy that includes policy 531, which is the transportation policy. So we're capturing language that was previously approved by the school board in policy 531.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Massey. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Oh, Member Luther?
No, that was not even me this time. I mean, I could say I am pleased that it's a much more gender neutral policy for dress code. Not entirely, but much more.
Thank you, Member Luther. All right. So hearing no further discussion, we'll move on to 8.6, first reading, substitute teachers policy 417.
And similar to the short-term classified substitute policy, there's recommended changes to the substitute teacher daily wage, moving the daily wage from $120 per day to $130 per day. Half day $60 to $65. And then those who have 50 accumulated days of substitute, they would have the increased rate of from 125 to 135 per day. There were days when the kids were in the classroom where we didn't have substitutes available. And as a result, we were pulling specialists or other staff to fill those classrooms, or in some extreme cases, students were doubling up. So, and we weren't alone. As a district, many districts were facing shortages with substitute teachers, and oftentimes our substitute teachers substitute in other districts in addition to ours. So it's really critical that we be competitive with the wage that we pay for substitute teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. Any discussion?
Ms. Julie, I have a question. Dr. Massey, compared to the neighboring districts, what are we competitive? Because I know it is always a challenge to get substitute teachers. I know I hear that a lot, and I just want to make sure that this is enough of an increase to really be able to have the available staff that we need.
You know, I would say that we're more competitive. We're still behind some, and we're probably at par with others. Director Friedman has done some research at that.
We are similar to some, way behind others. To bring us up to level with White Bear Lake would cause a budget situation that we can't do. We understand. We got a pretty good game plan of what this is going to cost and how to build that in. They are substantially above where we are. For example, there are a few others to the south of us. We're trying to get ourselves into more of a ballpark that hopefully the labor market that's more right around us, where we're going to draw from naturally anyway, feels a little bit less incentivized to get the car and drive.
And how about like Centennial? Are we even near them at all?
I am not remembering off the top of my head, and sadly I don't have the information with me, but I'm thinking that we are at least somewhat closer for Centennial. They and we tend to run somewhat similar.
Right, and I know we're way out of the ballpark with teachers on call, I'm assuming. Have you looked at that option?
So Teachers on Call pays what you contract with them to pay.
Okay.
So they don't have an established rate. They are a service that you can bring in, and they will contract with the district, and part of the contract will be what the pay rate offered to people is, and then they will charge their fee on top of that.
Okay. Sounds expensive.
It's not a cheap way to go. I mean, they do a nice job. They have some nice tools. They use some of the same tools that we do. They do have some nice tools. We have, in my never to be humble opinion, one of the best tools that we can possibly have. Her name is Sharon Wilson.
Okay.
Sharon gets on the phone and she has relationships with people, and it's hard to say no to Sharon when she gets going.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Well, good. Okay. Well, I just know that it's always a really hard thing, especially at the high school. It seems to be a real struggle. And I just want to make sure that, we can hopefully get some substitutes to help us out a bit. So thank you.
We do believe that this will help. Yes.
Good. Thank you so much.
Who is our resident expert on substituting in our district and other districts.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Well, thank
I
you.
am. Yes, I am. And to answer the question just very briefly, I tend to sub mostly with 916, our partner. And with 916, their rate of pay is $140 a day. So we're at least getting closer to that number, which did concern me originally. So we're closer. But one last thing, the interesting thing about it is with Teachers on Call, they do not tell you what the rate of pay is for the district. So when I go to ESOP or wherever it is and look, I could look at Centennial, it would not tell me. I would have to call Centennial and say, what do you pay, to find out what the actual rate of pay is, which I think is a deficit for them. I mean, they need to correct that. But.
And I just have to say, as an editorial side note, that I just find that as ironic as anything, because we call the districts in order to get the information, put together our comparatives. And some of the districts that use Teachers on Call tell us, well, we don't have that information. You'd have to contact Teachers on Call. It's like go ask Ma, go ask Pa. It's good.
All right. Thank you, Director Friedman. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. We'll move on to number 9, review the upcoming calendar dates. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by aye.
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 Aye. All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.